Hello, DM Geezer Jim, continuing along in the 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide. Still working through Chapter 3, lots of stuff. Short videos, at least. You know, it is what it is. This one's going to be a little bit longer. There's a lot of stuff here to unpack in regards to, in comparison to some of the previous sections. So we're going to get to the reading and we'll get to the commentary at the end of it. But our next section is Chapter 3, Gods and Other Powers. So let's get into it here. Different deities rule the various aspects of the cosmos and mortal life, sometimes cooperating with each other, sometimes competing. People gather in public shrines to worship gods of life and wisdom, or meet in hidden places to venerate gods of deception or destruction. The divine beings of the multiverse are also divine rank is the next section. The divine beings of the multiverse are often categorized according to their relative cosmic power. Some gods who are worshipped on multiple worlds have a different rank on each world, depending on their influence there. Greater deities are generally the oldest gods of a pantheon, responsible, at least in myth, for creating or parenting the other gods. Their provinces are major areas of nature and mortal life, such as agriculture, the sun, and death. Greater deities are ultimately beyond mortal understanding, and they're often known by different names across regions, cultures, and even worlds. Having no fixed appearance or gender, they can assume whatever form they like. Occasionally, these deities manifest and perform mythic deeds among mortals. Lesser deities are typically described in myth as the creation's children or servitors of the greater deities. They govern narrower provinces such as the activities of mortal life or limited aspects of the natural world. They share the fundamentally ineffable nature of greater gods, but they are more likely to manifest in mortal realms. Quasi-deities have a divine origin, but they don't receive or answer prayers. They are still immensely powerful beings, and in theory they could ascend to godhood if they amass enough worshippers. Quasi-deities fall into the following subcategories. Demigods are divine beings with mortal origin. Some were born mortal and attained godhood, while others were born from the union of a deity and a mortal. Their mortal parentage makes them demigods. Titans are the creations of deities. They might be manufactured on a divine forge, born from the blood spilled by a god, or otherwise brought about through divine will or substance. Some titans, including krakens and the Tarrasque, appear in the monster manual. Vestiges are deities who have lost nearly all of their worshippers and are considered dead from a mortal perspective. Esoteric rituals can sometimes contact vestiges and draw on their latent power. The next section is home plane and alignment. Gods aren't defined by, Gods aren't defined by mortal conceptions of alignment, and different mortal worshippers might interpret a god's behavior and teachings through the lens of different alignments. That said, gods tend to live on the outer planes that most closely match their general alignment tendencies, so it's safe to assume that the teachings of a god who resides in pandemonium, a place of rampant evil and chaos, encourages behavior that is chaotic evil, while a god who resides in Elysium, the plane of pure good, encourages neutral good behavior. People can worship a god without obeying that god's tenets or conforming to the god's presumed alignment. People from all walks of life might participate in the annual festival of innocent mischief associated with the trickster god, even peoples whose alignment is generally lawful and opposed to the trickster's teachings. To stave off disease, good-hearted people might make offerings to appease the wrath of a god associated with plague. Even cleric characters don't need to have any particular alignment to serve their gods. Gods and divine magic. Divine magic, which includes the spells cast by clerics, druids, paladins, and rangers, is mediated through beings and forces that are categorized as divine. These can include gods, but also include the primal forces of nature, the beneficent powers of ancestral spirits, the sacred weight of a paladin's oath, and the impersonal principles or entities such as fate or the order of the universe. These beings and forces grant characters the power to wield the magic of their planar domains. For game purposes, Wielding divine power isn't dependent on the god's ongoing approval or the strength of a character's devotion. The power is a gift offered to a select few. Once given, it can't be rescinded. That said, characters' relationships with the divine forces they access to wield their magic, much like the warlocks' relationship with their patrons, are ripe for exploration. A cleric might accompany every casting of a spell with a litany of complaints directed at the gods. The paladin class description of the player's handbook offers some suggestions for how a player might roleplay a situation where their paladin has broken their oath. You can also decide how NPCs react to a character whose behavior doesn't square with the ideals implied by the holy symbol the character wears. Divine Knowledge. The Commune spell. Let's look at it. Level 5, casting 1 minute, range self duration 1 minute. You contact a deity or divine proxy and ask up to 3 questions that can be answered with yes or no. You must ask your question before the spell ends within 1 minute. You receive a correct answer for each question. Divine beings aren't necessarily omniscient, so you might receive unclear as an answer if a question pertains to information that lies beyond the deity's knowledge. In a case where a one-word answer could be misleading or contrary to the deity's interests, the DM might offer a short phrase as an answer instead. If you cast this spell more than once before finishing a long rest, there's a cumulative 25% chance for each casting after the first that you get no answer. Okay, so the Commune spell allows its caster to ask a deity or an agent of the god yes or no questions and to receive correct information. And other spells of the divination school have similar effects. As the Commune spell description states, gods aren't necessarily omniscient, but they are tremendously knowledgeable, particularly with regard to their particular areas of influence. A sea god can be reasonably expected to know anything that has happened in or on a sea, for example, and a martial god knows the details about wars. Gods can reliably predict the future, at least in the short term, hence their ability to answer spells such as augury and divination. And some gods might be unwilling to reveal their ignorance, choosing to give an unclear answer rather than admit they don't know the truth. Divine intervention is the next section. In some campaigns, gods are fond of meddling in mortal affairs, and heroes sometimes call on the gods for aid beyond what divine magic ordinarily provides. The gods sometimes also send dreams, omens, or emissaries to direct mortals along a certain path. Keep these 2 principles in mind to guide your use of divine intervention in your campaign. Don't eliminate character choice. The gods can tell the characters to do things and even threaten to punish them if they don't do things, but the gods can't control mortal actions. Don't eliminate risk and danger. The intervention of a god should never guarantee success or victory, nor should a god's interference portend immediate defeat. Gods can act to change the balance of an encounter or offer an avenue of escape. They count on mortal heroes to act like heroes. With those principles in mind, you might have gods intervene in dire situations in one of these ways. Blessings. A god might bestow a blessing. See supernatural gifts later in this chapter to help a character in need. Emissaries. A god might send a celestial, a fiend, or some other kind of emissary to aid a character with information, guidance, or even combat. Miracles. As the simplest form of miracle, a god can produce the effect of any spell that devotees of that god might cast, typically cleric or druid spells. But a god's direct intervention can take any form you choose, often reflecting the god's nature. Creating religions. A list of gods is a good starting point, and it can be sufficient to get a campaign started. But you can add more depth to your campaign world by fleshing out more details of religious beliefs and practice. Myths. Stories about the gods explore their relationship with each other, with the natural world, and with the realm of mortals. Myths describe familial relationships amongst the gods, deeds of creation, past interactions with mortals, or battles between gods and other cosmic forces. Given the incomprehensible nature of gods, these myths might not actually reveal anything about the gods, but they certainly describe people's understandings of their own place in relationship to the gods. Religious practice. People honor multiple gods of a pantheon in different circumstances. A person might burn incense to a hearth or family deity at a kitchen altar in the morning, pray to a deity of the hunt while hunting in the afternoon, and join a communal harvest feast at the temple of an agricultural deity in the evening. Cities and large towns can host numerous temples dedicated to individual gods important to the community, while the smaller settlements might have a single shrine devoted to any gods the locals revere. Temples and shrines outside settlements often mark places where a god or the manifestation of a god appeared or caused a miracle. These sites become the focus of pilgrims who travel long distances to partake in the holy power assumed to linger there. The last section here is a sidebar. Let me zoom in on that. Sorry, I didn't realize I zoomed out. I had to lean back a little bit. My neck was popping, so I zoomed it out a little bit. So, building your own pantheon. Most of the published D&D settings described in Chapter 5 have their own pantheons of gods. If you're creating your own setting, you can use the list of Greyhawk gods in Chapter 5 or build your own pantheon. A simple way to build a basic pantheon is to create one god for each of the outer planes described in Chapter 6, except for the 9 hells, which is ruled by the archdevil Asmodeus, and the abyss, which is the domain of demons. So Arborea might be the domain of a god who is a patron of the arts, celebrated at great feasts, while Gehenna's deity might be a greedy, vengeful god worshipped by the people of the same bent. If you prefer, you can also put multiple deities on the same plane, so Arcadia might be home to the twin gods who are patrons of merchants and smiths. That would be Bitopia, but it's okay. I opined too early. Alternatively, you might decide that your world only has one god, who might be viewed differently by various sects or religions, or one of good and one of evil. Or your world might be alive with spirits great and small, from lesser river spirits to the godlike spirits who inhabit great mountains. Impersonal forces and philosophies can also fill the role of gods in a campaign. Okay, that's the end of that section. Pretty lengthy, decent stuff. Let's kind of unpack it, just chat for a couple more minutes here on it. This is a guidance thing, okay? There's not as much of an emphasis on gods as there was back in the day. You don't necessarily ever have to have an involvement in a pantheon, but I think it's important to understand if you have divine magic in your world, there should be some source for the divinity. What is giving you the divine magic? Everyone kind of assumes that the arcane magic comes from ley lines or comes from the weave, or the elemental flux or whatever. And divine magic, well, we don't believe in God, so it's whatever. And so if it is whatever for your campaign, it is whatever. But this gives you a good order to start thinking through the divine stuff. This is mostly behind the scenes stuff. But because you have clerics, and you have paladins, and you have warlocks, you're going to have the celestial, the divine, and divine is not just celestial. It can also be somewhat fiendish in nature. You're going to have the whole outer realm of the cosmic wheel that comes into play through gameplay mechanics. So it's important to read this section and kind of process it for you and for your own table, and know where the gods come into play in your campaign and in your stories. If you're doing like Theros and getting heavy into Grecian mythology and those kind of those more epic stories of Gilgamesh or the Odyssey, then the gods are at the front and center. So this is going to make a little bit more of a thing to you. But if you're playing around in Ravnica, for another published setting example, they're certainly divine, but there's not a direct interference of them because there's more of a preponderance of spirits and magitech and this and that and the other there. So there's a little bit less of a omniscient presence of the gods, as it were. So your mileage is going to vary, but this section is important, in my opinion, for a new dungeon master to get their mind around, to make sure that at least they have a believable, integrated, and immersive source for divine magic in their games. In your games, I should say. So take your time, read through this section, kind of think it out as you're planning your campaign worlds. Day one adventures, man, you don't need to worry about it, man. But as you plan your world building, as you're planning your long-term campaigns, I believe gods and other powers, this section is going to have a lot more weight for you. So read through this section now, but mark it for later, because you're gonna need to kind of keep this stuff in mind as you get to that. But hey, that's the end of this section. Our next section, we're plowing through chapter 3 here, man. Oh shit, we're that's the officially more than halfway point. The next video is going to cover hazards. That's going to be dungeon hazards, world hazards, and all of that. Thanks a lot for being here, y'all. Push that like button, push that subscribe button. If you know some DMs that are getting into the game, if you just know some people, you think this is some good stuff, share the link with some people, man. We'd love to have some more. But above all, thank you for your time. Would love to hear back from you in the comments, and hopefully we'll see you for the next episode. Be safe.